My name is Rachel Morgan, and if you walked into my office today, you'd never guess the story behind the smile I wear. From the 12th floor of my building, I can see the entire stretch of Main Street, the street I own now. Funny, isn't it? A girl who once lost everything, now signing off leases to the very people who used to laugh at her. This morning, as I smoothed out the silk sleeve of my ivory blouse and set my coffee mug down, my phone buzzed. A name flashed across the screen. Emily Carter. My cousin. The same cousin who once took my house, the only real thing I thought was mine. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the phone vibrate against the polished mahogany of my desk, humming like an echo of the past I thought I had buried. The sunlight poured in through the glass walls, catching the golden rim of the picture frame on my desk, a photo of me, younger, hungrier, and far more fragile than I am now. It's strange how life comes full circle, how the very people who broke you once crawl back when they need something. My hand hovered over the phone, torn between anger and amusement. I didn't need to wonder what Emily wanted. I already knew. And for the first time in years, I was ready to answer. I was 22 when everything I thought was safe, solid, and mine vanished. Back then, I wasn't Rachel Morgan, property owner. I was just Rachel, a girl clinging to a small house in the suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina, the one place that held every memory of my late mother. The chipped blue shutters, the lilac bushes she planted by the porch, the kitchen where her laughter seemed to still echo. That house wasn't just walls and wood. It was all I had left of her. But grief makes you naive. And family can be cruel in ways you don't see until it's too late. Emily Carter, my cousin, was older, sharper, and always carried that smug smile that made you feel like she knew something you didn't. When she offered to help me manage the mortgage after Mom's passing, I believed her. She was blood after all. I still remember sitting at the dining table with papers spread out, my hands trembling as I signed where she pointed. "Don't worry, Ratch," she said sweetly, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "This is just to make things easier for you. I'll handle the hard stuff." But weeks later, the letter came. My name was gone from the deed. The house, my house, was no longer mine. I confronted her, voice breaking, palms clammy. "Emily, how could you? That was Mom's." She cut me off with a cold smile. "You should have read the fine print. You're too emotional, Rachel. You'll thank me one day." The sting of those words was sharper than any blade. I felt the floor tilt under me, the walls closing in. That night, I packed a single duffel bag. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore, not with her in it, parading around like a queen who'd won. Before leaving, I stopped at the mantel. Sitting there was a small silver locket, my mother's. Inside, a note she had written to me when I turned 16. "Remember, Rachel, roots are important, but so are wings." I clenched it in my fist. If Emily had stolen my roots, then I would have to find my wings. And I walked away, homeless,
Heartbroken.
but not defeated. Leaving Charleston felt like tearing out a piece of my soul, but I knew staying would kill me faster. I landed in Atlanta with barely enough cash to cover a week's rent at a rundown studio apartment. The walls smelled faintly of mildew, and the heater clanked like an old typewriter. But for the first time, the air was mine. No cousin hovering, no shadows of betrayal, just me and the hollow silence of possibility. The first weeks were brutal. I worked double shifts at a diner off Peachtree Street, scrubbing syrup off sticky booths and balancing trays that felt heavier with every hour. My feet ached constantly, my nails chipped from endless scrubbing. Every night, I'd collapse onto a thrift store mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, whispering Mom's words to myself. "Roots and wings, Rachel wings." One evening, after a particularly long shift, I found myself chatting with a regular, Mrs. Eleanor Wright, a poised woman in her late 60s who always ordered chamomile tea. She asked why someone like me looked so tired, so worn down. And for the first time, I told a stranger the truth. Eleanor listened without interruption, her eyes sharp but kind. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "Rachel, don't let betrayal define you. Use it.
Channel it.
You've got fire in you. I can see it. Ever thought about real estate? I laughed then.
Me?
A waitress who'd just lost her own house? But Eleanor smiled knowingly. Sometimes the ones who've been locked out of doors are the best at opening them. She wasn't just being kind. Eleanor turned out to be a retired real estate broker, once one of the most respected names in Atlanta. She offered to mentor me, not with handouts, but with lessons. The journey was grueling. I studied late into the night, memorizing property laws, zoning codes, mortgage rates, words that once sounded like a foreign language, now carved into my brain. By day, I worked shifts at the diner. By night, I shadowed Eleanor, tagging along to open houses, watching how she spoke, how she carried herself with authority. There were nights I cried into my pillow, certain I wasn't cut out for this world. But there were also moments of triumph. My first rental listing. My first commission check. My first client who shook my hand and said, "Thank you, Ms. Morgan. You made this possible." Each small win stitched a new layer of strength inside me. I upgraded from the studio to a modest one-bedroom. I traded chipped nail polish for a neat French manicure, diner uniforms for crisp blouses. And all the while, I stayed silent on social media. My family thought I was still scraping by. I let them think that. Because I wanted my success to be mine alone, hidden, private, sacred. What Emily didn't know is that the girl she'd once dismissed as too emotional was slowly becoming the woman who would own not just a house, but the very street she once walked away from. The day Emily reappeared in my life, it wasn't through a phone call I ignored. It was through my receptionist's voice. "Ms. Morgan," she said, peeking into my glass-walled office. "There's a woman here asking for you. She says she's your cousin." For a moment, my breath hitched. Emily Carter. The name alone still had the power to sting like salt in an old wound. But I wasn't the same girl she had betrayed. I straightened my silk blouse, adjusted the delicate chain of my mother's locket around my neck, and said calmly, "Send her in." Emily walked in wearing a pastel dress and forced confidence, but her eyes darted nervously around the office. I watched as her gaze lingered on the abstract art lining the walls, the soft leather chairs, the sweeping view of Main Street below. "My street." She smiled thinly. "Rachel, it's been a while." I folded my hands on the mahogany desk. "Yes, it has." Behind her, to my mild surprise, walked in Aunt Linda, Emily's mother, the woman who had always treated me like the poor relation. They both looked out of place here, perched in seats that seemed to swallow them whole. Emily cleared her throat. I heard you're doing well. Actually, that's why we came." "The house, Rachel. You remember, the one in Charleston?" I let out a small laugh, sharp and deliberate. "Oh, I remember." She shifted uncomfortably. "Well, things have been difficult. The mortgage payments, the repairs, property taxes, it's overwhelming. We thought maybe you could help. You've always been generous." Generous. That was the word she chose after stealing my home. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch, letting them soak in every polished detail of the office. Then, finally, I spoke. "Emily, Aunt Linda, do you know where you're sitting right now?" They blinked, confused. "This isn't just an office," I continued softly. "From this floor, I manage the entire block you just drove through. Every storefront, every rental property, every apartment on Main Street, I own them." Emily's mouth fell open. Aunt Linda blinked rapidly, as if trying to process foreign math. "You what?" Emily stammered. I smiled, not cruelly but firmly. "You took my house. But in losing it, I found something far greater. I worked, I built, I invested.
And now?
That little house is just one of many under my portfolio. In fact, the bank that holds your mortgage?" I paused, savoring the look on her face. They answered to me. Emily's face drained of color. Aunt Linda clutched her purse like it might anchor her. "You can't be serious," Emily whispered. "Oh, I am," I said, leaning forward. "I own the very street you walked in on today. The coffee shop you passed?"
Mine.
"The boutique you admired on the corner?" "Mine. And the house you're struggling with, technically mine too." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the hum of the city below. Their eyes darted around the office again, but now it wasn't admiration, it was disbelief.
Shame.
Regret. Emily's voice finally cracked. Rachel, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I cut her off, my voice steady. You meant every signature, every smirk, every word you used to belittle me. You meant to take away my roots. But you didn't expect me to grow wings. The weight of my words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Emily looked small.
And I
had never felt taller. Emily sat frozen, her fingers twisting the strap of her designer purse like a nervous child. Aunt Linda looked at me the way people look at a storm, equal parts fear and disbelief. For years, they had seen me as the fragile girl without a home. Now, I was the woman who held the keys to their survival. I'll be honest. I began, my tone calm but unshakable. A part of me wants to throw you out of here. To remind you what it felt like when you left me with nothing. But I'm not that girl anymore. I don't act out of bitterness. I act out of choice. Emily's eyes watered, her voice breaking. Rachel, please, we're drowning. The repairs alone are more than we can manage. You've built something incredible, clearly, but we're family. Family. The word landed differently now. I leaned forward. If I help you, it won't be because we share blood. It will be because I choose to. And if I do, there will be conditions. They exchanged uneasy glances. First, I said firmly, you sell the house to me. At market value. No tricks, no fine print. It will return to my name, where it always belonged. Emily swallowed hard but nodded. Second, Emily, you get a job. A real one. Not depending on handouts, not riding on someone else's work. You start earning, contributing, proving you can stand on your own 2 feet. Her face flushed, pride colliding with desperation. But she nodded again. And Aunt Linda, I continued, my voice softening but not bending, you stop comparing me to everyone else. You stop belittling me, dismissing me. If you want a place in my life, it will be as equals, not as judge and defendant. Her lips trembled, but she whispered, I understand. I took a breath, my hand instinctively brushing against the silver locket around my neck. Lastly, both of you will attend counseling. Individually. This family has been poisoned by arrogance, jealousy, and silence for too long. I refuse to let it keep infecting me. If you want my support, you'll start fixing yourselves too. Silence stretched. For a moment, I thought they might storm out, too proud to accept. But pride doesn't keep a roof over your head. Emily finally spoke, voice small. We'll do it. I'll do it. Aunt Linda's eyes glistened. She nodded once, stiff but sincere. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time, the balance of power wasn't tilted against me. It was mine to hold. Good, I said simply. Because I won't save you from yourselves. But I can give you a chance. What you do with it is on you. And with that, the conversation ended not as a plea, but as a pact. The weeks that followed felt surreal. For years, I had carried the weight of betrayal like an invisible scar. But now, each day brought a new kind of release. The papers were signed. The house in Charleston was mine again legally, finally, completely. When the deed arrived in my name, I ran my fingers over the ink, half expecting it to vanish like smoke. But it didn't. It was real. The house that once symbolized loss was now a trophy of resilience. Emily started working at a small interior design firm downtown. She sent me updates hesitantly at first, her first paycheck, her first client meeting. There was a humility in her words I had never seen before. Aunt Linda, true to her promise, began therapy. She even wrote me a letter apologizing for years of belittlement, admitting that envy had colored her judgment. I read it twice, tears stinging my eyes, before tucking it away. Did I forgive them instantly?
No.
Forgiveness, I've learned, is not a light switch. It's a process. But I gave them the chance to change, and for the first time, they were taking it. One weekend, I drove down to Charleston. The lilac bushes in front of the house had grown wild, their scent filling the air as if Mom herself had been tending them all these years. I stood on the porch, the silver locket warm against my skin, and opened it again. Her words stared back at me. Roots are important, but so are wings. I smiled through the tears. She was right, of course. Losing my roots had forced me to discover my wings. And now, I wasn't just standing in front of my mother's house. I was standing on an entire street that bore my name, my work, my fight. As I turned to leave, I whispered softly, "Mom, I found my wings. And I didn't just get my house back. I own the street." The wind carried the words away, but the strength in them stayed with me. Because this wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of the life I had built, a life no one could take from me again. Final line, narrator's voiceover punch. My cousin took my house, but I grew wings, and now I own the street.